Brothers and sisters, we can gently open our eyes, and we'd like to welcome you to Deer Park. Thank you for choosing to be here with new friends and old friends. We're so delighted to be sharing this space together with you for the next few days. Perhaps we can begin our evening as we like to do here in Deer Park with 3 sounds of the bell. When we hear the sound of the bell, we listen to it as if it's the voice of a dearly beloved one, calling us back to our true home, calling us back to be our true, our most authentic self. Dear family, it's such a delight to be sitting together with you. And for me personally, it's a special delight to be sitting together with Sister Nghiem, Sister True Fragrant Adornment. I was contemplating when the last time it was that we gave orientation together, and I actually think it was in the year 2000, 16 years ago. We were so young back then. In the year 2000, we were teaching in Australia and in New Zealand. And I have one very strong memory of being together with Sister Nghiem at that time. We were flying back from Auckland to Australia. And we were in the airport, and our flight kept getting delayed and delayed and delayed and delayed. We found the chapel, the meditation hall in the airport. And we had our own sitting and walking meditation, and every so often the Qantas, the airline representatives, would come along and give us meal tickets. So we kept accumulating all of these meal tickets. We had a lovely time. We were having our own personal retreat and things, and we had a beautiful lunch, and it was an amazing time. I think we were delayed for something like 9 hours or longer. It was a really long time, but everyone else was so antsy by the time they got on the plane. Sister Nghiem and myself were very relaxed and energized, and we had a wonderful time. Did you use all of your meal tickets? I used all of mine. So we haven't had a chance to be on the same orientation panel for 16 years, so this is a special treat for me. And I was thinking of that, I believe, because our teacher shared with us a number of years ago that when we're on retreat, let us engage with each moment as a delight, as an enjoyment. It may not be the moment that we think that we should be having or that we had planned, but how can we eat in order that this moment of eating be the happiest moment we've experienced? How can we walk to make this step the most peaceful, most wonderful step we've ever taken? What do we need to do in order to sit in such a way that this moment right now can be the most peaceful and healing moment we've experienced? This is the power that we have as human beings, the power to choose how to experience this moment. So in a retreat, we have the luxury of a very special environment in which everything's set up for us to be able to cultivate this energy of presence that we call mindfulness. We have these next few days in which to do nothing but to walk in such a way that we're most authentically ourselves, to eat in such a way that we can nourish ourselves deeply, to sit in such a way that insight can flower. This is a great luxury in this day and age. Let's treasure every moment that we have these next few days together. This retreat is a very special retreat. It's called the Earth Holders Retreat. And for me, as I was walking down to the meditation hall, an image came to my mind. It's an image that is, for me, one of the most powerful images in the Lotus Sutra. The Buddha, in this metaphorical story, the Buddha is surrounded by all of these powerful beings, and all of these powerful beings say to the Buddha, you know, we're going to be there for you. We're going to help you to rescue everyone who's suffering. And the Buddha says something really surprising. He says, you know, I don't want your help. I don't need it. And you can see just visualize all of these powerful beings saying, what? You don't want our help? And the Buddha said, no, I've got all the help I need. And then he points out to the earth. And there's nothing there but the earth. And then suddenly there's a rumble, and the earth herself splits open. And out of the earth, all of these beings emerge. They're called great beings coming from the earth. And the Buddha said, these are the beings, the earth herself, these bodhisattvas from the earth are those who will be able to be of service, those who will be able to bring healing. It was a great teacher in the Zen lineage who said, you know, as we've heard before, the miracle is not to walk on air or to walk on water, but to be able to walk on the earth. So on one level, it's being able to perform the miracle of being fully present. That's already a miracle for many of us in this day and this time, to be able to be fully present for our step, for our lived experience. But on a deeper level, it is to embrace all of the different aspects of our being and all of the different aspects of our individual and collective experience, to be able to become a skillful gardener for ourselves and for the world at large, to be able to inhabit our experience on a deeper level. We hear a lot about climate change, and our natural tendency as human beings is to focus outside on the current situation of the world outside, or the world that appears to be outside. The desperate situation that's occurring at this point in time. And yet also there's our inner ecology as well, very much connected to the quote-unquote outer ecology. So as we look and we explore different aspects of climate change, I think it's also important to explore our own inner ecology, our own inner ecosystem, and to explore our own inner climate changes that are going on from moment to moment. This is one of the powers, one of the energies of mindfulness. Somebody shared not so long ago that their aspiration is to transcend. And I thought that was a very interesting comment. And I've been contemplating a lot. Because in Buddhism, in meditation practice, we're all about transformation, not about transcendence, not about somehow floating above the realities of our day-to-day experience, but entering deeply into this moment, of understanding this difficulty, of understanding this almost unanswerable question of the situation of the world outside and the situation of our own inner world and how they're connected. This is an important contemplation for our time. And I want to take a moment to celebrate the fact that we've chosen to be here and we've chosen to look into these important and difficult questions. This is something to celebrate. So let our attention through the next few days, as we're contemplating some of these big questions that might appear to be something to wrestle with on the outside, let's also ask ourselves how these questions relate to our own inner landscape. The energy that we can develop that can help us to understand a little of the relationship between what we call the outer world and the inner world is the energy that we call mindfulness. Mindfulness is a relaxed attention to what's taking place within us and around us in every moment. It has the capacity to transform. It has the capacity to generate insight. With a lot of these questions that we wrestle with, whether they're questions of climate change or social injustice, or other questions of how to transform situations that seem to be untransformable, often we find ourselves wrestling up here. And the wrestle or the conversation takes place mainly on the intellectual level. That's a good start. It's a good start. The Buddha always shared that we need to begin with right understanding. You've got to understand a situation. But then there are another 7 steps. So starting with right understanding is pretty much step 1. Mindfulness can help us to go a little bit further. And one thing I personally find interesting about mindfulness, maybe nobody else does, but nobody's told me they haven't found it interesting, so I keep sharing this until somebody says, I don't find that interesting anymore, is that mindfulness is a translation of the Pali word sati, or the Sanskrit word smrti. It's on the stained glass behind me. And that translation, the word mindfulness, was first used by an Anglican, by an Episcopalian pastor in 1870. So therefore it comes to us through a cultural lens, which I think in terms of dealing with some of these questions is not a helpful lens. Because for many of us in this society, we've grown up with the concept that the mind and the body are separate. We tend to live above our ears. Mindfulness in its original context meant a full-bodied awareness. Consciousness immersed and present through every cell of our body. There was not in the Indian philosophy of the Buddha's time a sense that mind was only something up here. But just as if I ask you to do the exercise of pointing to yourself, instinctively you will tend to point somewhere in this area. There was the understanding of consciousness as being rooted in the core of our being. So to understand mindfulness, we need to understand that it is not an intellectual game. Meditation is not an intellectual game. And the concentration we develop through mindfulness practice is not the kind of intellectual concentration that one has when one's studying for the SATs. We don't feel so energized and present in our body and things after, let's say, 4 to 6 hours of studying for the SATs. So mindfulness practice is presence immersed in our body. When we're looking deeply into a subject of meditation, through these next few days, the subject of meditation is the earth within and the earth around us. Rather than just wrestling up here with some of the very difficult questions, we bring our full-bodied, our full-hearted awareness as we walk, as we eat, as we sit. And we can understand the impacts of our actions. We can also understand the way that the earth is speaking to us in each moment. We can get into contact with the nourishment of the community that's surrounding us. It can be very powerful to develop this energy of full-bodied awareness. And I'm looking forward to sharing these next few days together with you. Our sister is going to share some concrete practices that we'll be enjoying in the monastery for the next few days for developing this awareness.
So, like Brother Phap shared, that the mindfulness energy is something that we have and that we can cultivate. And one of the very concrete tool we always have with us is our breath. And you will find that throughout your time here, you will do almost things that you do every day already anyway. But what's the difference is that we will be doing it with our awareness. And we want to, that's the way we can train ourselves to strengthen the energy of mindfulness, the energy of awareness in us. So the breath helps us to do that because it's always with us. If we're not breathing, we're not there anymore. So when we say to be aware of our breath, is to really be with the whole length of the breath. For example, I need to keep this microphone vertical, or else I would put it more horizontal for you to see. But when you're breathing in, if this is our awareness, we need to stay from the beginning of our in-breath all the way down to the end of our in-breath. And then we start breathing out. We need to also stay our consciousness and our awareness with the whole length of our out-breath. And that's just very basic practice, staying with that awareness. But of course, our tendency is our thoughts would start flying out. If we're halfway here, we'd start remembering, did I remember to put my phone on vibrate, or I actually turned it off? Or did I turn off the light of my car? And so whenever things like that come, just be aware, again, awareness that I'm no longer with my breath. I'm out here with my lights or with my phone. Come back. Am I breathing in or out now? If I'm in, come back to the in-breath. Stay with it as long as you can. And that's the training. When it goes out, we know it goes out, we bring it back. When we're back with it, and the longer we train with that, the time that our breath goes away from, or our mind, our awareness is no longer with the breath, gets shorter or lengthened out. The distance or the time that we can stay with our awareness is longer. I tend to also see the breath like a 18-wheeler. It can be empty, meaning that you can practice with just the breath, which is very much easier because it's just one topic or one focus. But then we don't have the luxury of staying with just the breath. Many things are demanded of us. Well, even if we were to live alone, we have to take care of this and that. We have to still interact with other people. So there's demand on us. So the breath also can help us to be aware of another, at least one or more other topics. For example, our body. Just when you came in, and we were instructed to be aware of our whole body, of how we have the contact to where we're sitting, or how the energy, the heat surrounding us, or when you went walking, how you felt the breeze or the coolness on our face, to be more aware of that. So we can, I wouldn't say that the mindful breathing helps us to multitask. I don't think we want to practice multitasking. I think it's more to help us to be better at sequential tasking, because we can't really do two things at the same time, but because we're more aware, we can do one task and hopefully fulfill that task completely and more deeply, then we can go on to the next task, being then aware and be present for the next task. Again, we don't have the luxury to just stay with the breath, but we do have time here and there to be with our sitting, or with our that's actually in our meditation. It's there's two parts to meditation. The breath helps us to be able to stop, and also with the meditation, it's to be able to look deeply. But to stop, when we say stopping, it's not just physically stopping, but it is also stopping what our brother was saying, being above our thinking, above our ears. We're also stopping the thoughts in our mind. When I was giving the example of just staying with the breath, the tendency for the breath to be, the awareness to be away from the breath, is that tendency to coming out, remembering other things, or being distracted by other things. And using the breath, we can then help us to, when we focus back to the breath or focus back to one topic in our meditation, then that helps us to slow down and break that tendency to be being distracted. So here we have other tools to help us to train that stopping. One of them is what we just practiced now, is with the bell. We've been reminded that the bell is a sound to remind us to be back to ourselves, to our body, and to really be truly our authentic self here, knowing where, how we are, how we feel physically as well as emotionally. And so with whenever you hear the bell here in this hall, or the bell outside, the activity bells, or the in the dining hall, or even the clock chimes, that's the time that we can just slow down, stop physically whatever we're doing safely. If you're carrying something, or you're in the middle of the road somewhere, walk slowly to the side, and just stop and be comfortable with your position, with your posture. If it's raining or if it's too hot, get in the shade, get under the cover, and enjoy just 2 or 3 breaths, coming back. And at that time, whatever you might be distracted with, or was involved with a conversation, or with yourself, or with a friend, stop right there to be able to come back and nourish ourselves with knowing, being right there, knowing again how we are physically. Are we tired? Are we energized? Are we bored? Are we agitated? Things like that, but just being with that and being aware of that. And when after 3 breaths, we can continue with what we do. But when we do, again, we will hear all these bells all of a sudden, off and on. And so it'll give us a chance to do this often throughout the day. And we train ourselves to be able to just physically stop, and then also hopefully mentally stop. And we cultivate that tendency so that when you go back home, you can use various things to remind ourselves. The red lights, or your cell phones, or other people's cell phones. Things that be creative to what we call them bells of mindfulness, is to be able to do that, to come back and give ourselves a little short moments of stopping, of rejuvenating ourselves. Another practice that we would like to also offer and you is the sitting meditation. We'll be able to do that every morning, and hopefully at the end of the evening sessions every night. And the sitting has a posture. Most of you are already in it. Brother Phap is also there. It's what we called the half lotus or the full lotus. It depends on whether your body is comfortable in that, and basically more is that you are about a third on your cushion, and you want to be in make a base of triangular base so that you're stable, like a stool with 3 legs. So the back of your back, your bottom, and your 2 knees should be a triangular foundation. And so most of the time we're sharing that you should be about the first third of your seat. And if you can't be on the cushion, then you can be on the chair like myself. And again, when we're sitting, we want to have our back straight, but not rigid. And imagine like we're being pulled from a little string just above our head, and to keep our spine straight. So the neck should be aligned with the rest of our body, so we're not too far back or too far front. And those of us who do a lot of office work, we tend to be folding forward to make sure you kind of stretch your shoulders and then let it down, ease your tension down. And don't lean back, because when you rest against the back of the seat, we slowly will be kind of lounging, and that kind of breaks our concentration as well as not very good. It doesn't help us to maintain our concentration. For me, the sitting meditation period is a very luxurious time. It's time that we give ourselves a chance to really be alone with ourselves. During sitting meditation, no one can bother us with questions or demand us anything. So even if you can give yourself 5 minutes, 10 minutes, the more you can, the better it is. But again, it's the time you don't have to be answering or dealing with anything else but your own. But it's, again, not something to be gained intellectually, but it is to be with yourself and not to do anything. I don't know if you can catch the difference. Maybe in this retreat we can help each other to see that difference. Because a lot of times we have to be a mom, we have to be the teacher, or we have to be something, or do something. But we need to really physically be there for ourselves, come back to know where our body is ailing, or where our mind is having obstacles. So first of all, with the sitting, I would adjust my posture, either swinging forward and backward a little bit, because there's a center of weight or a center of gravity that you will find that you can sit in that position without really having to hold yourself up. It's really like when you're in it, you're really resting in it. There's no need to hold up your arms or your elbow. So find it where it can relax on your lap, whether you're on the cushion or on the chair. And once in a while, while you're sitting, with focusing on your breath or your meditation topic, come back to your posture. Because again, like I said, those of us who tend to do office work or lifting work will be hunched forward, and will be actually, in our tendency to do things, we're always looking forward like this. Come back and check where is the posture, and the breath helps us to come back and check with that. And again, lift up your shoulders back and drop it down, and also put a smile on your face. Actually, smiling doesn't take energy. It actually relaxes the tension that we keep on our faces. For me, the sitting is also a time to just be with the breath, not necessarily to go deeply into anything, but it is also a time that we can go deeply. Like Brother Phap was saying, our practice is to transform. So the practice with meditation with mindfulness energy is, for me, is like to fortify ourselves, to be able to be fully there, be peaceful and stable, to be able to walk through any difficulty, any fire, any obstacles that we may be having. And when we are that strong in ourselves, in our core, then we can take on whatever life might be giving us. Thank you for listening. Maybe I'll pass back to Brother Phap. I'll share the end of our trip to in Australia later.
So dear family, why don't we just take a moment to turn to each other and smile to each other? Are you sitting next to somebody that you don't know? Let's just turn and acknowledge that we're sitting in community. And smile to each other. Yeah. Sister, community is one of the great nourishments. It's so wonderful to be together in a place with people who share a similar aspiration. It's a great nutriment. And as Sister True Fragrance was sharing, I was reminded of a funny story. I like stories and jokes. I can't help it. It's just how I am. I was reminded of a story about smiling. A friend of mine is a monk, and he's also a psychologist. He was invited a few years ago to one of the Psychological Association conferences. And so he showed up at the hotel, and he was assigned a roommate, and he and his roommate, they had a good time together, and for the first couple of days. And then after that, he noticed his roommate in the early morning would kind of get out of the room really quickly and avoid him the whole day and come back really late and just go to bed. And so being a good psychologist, he caught the other gentleman and said, I'm noticing that there's some tension between us. I'd like to explore this together with you. And I mean, I could just feel the positive regard flowing when he told me that story. And so the other psychologist said, I'm so glad you brought that up. I haven't known how to share about this, but I've noticed that the first night we were together, I noticed when you were lying in bed, you were smiling, and then the next morning in bed, you were smiling, and you smiled through the day. And as you know, this was a few versions of the DSM ago, but in the DSM-4, smiling all the time is a psychosis, and I'm really worried about you. So my friend had an opportunity to share with the other gentleman about smiling meditation and the difference between smiling meditation and a psychotic smile. So I was happy to see very few smiles that I felt fit into the latter category tonight. But smiling, when it's a real smile, when we can come into contact with conditions of happiness that are there, and allowing that smile to come from deep within is a blessing. It's a blessing for ourselves and for those around us. When we see an image of the Buddha, we always see, or very often see, a gentle smile. We call this a smile of realization. It's something that is very natural. It's a smile that just blooms from within, particularly when we feel peaceful, we feel present, we feel fully ourselves. So if you feel a smile emerging, this is a very good place, this monastery, to share it with others. That's something we would love to share. I don't know about you, but one of my favorite practices is eating meditation. I love it. Here in the monastery, we have an opportunity to have 3 meals a day. And for me, that's a great happiness. In the Buddhist tradition, the dining hall is not actually called the dining hall. It's called the Hall of the 5 Contemplations. It's one of our meditation halls. So when we come into the dining hall, just like when we come into this meditation hall, it's what we call a sacred space. Funnily enough, almost, well, every area in life or in the monastery is a sacred space. But particularly the dining hall, when we step into that space, we want to be present, we want to be available. We want to enter with the spirit of inquisitiveness, because there are so many things to discover. And I don't just mean on the serving table. I mean within ourselves and within the community. I shared just a moment ago about the fact that community is a source of nourishment. So when we come into the Hall of the Five Contemplations, into the dining hall, the first nourishment we become aware of is the nourishment of each other. That's a form of food. Coming into contact with supportive brothers and sisters and brothers who are wanting to heal, wanting to go a little bit more deeply. That's a great condition of happiness. When we come into the dining hall, we use the space of the dining hall as a zone of what we call noble silence, which I'll share about in a little while. But in summary, noble silence means that we communicate with our whole bodies and with our presence, and very little with our mouth. We can communicate so deeply with our eyes, with our presence. So we try not to engage in too many conversations about things such as the weather or this, that, and the other, but really just be present for each other. When we come into the dining hall, most of the time for these meals we'll be lining up, and this can be a really powerful time of practice. For so many of us, we have, let's admit it to each other, this is Truth-Telling Thursdays. So many of us have some habit energies around food, don't we? There are people who don't like food to touch each other. There are those of us who have to eat things in a certain order. You know, if we don't have a cup of water, the world's going to fall apart. We all have our habit energies around food. It's okay. It is what it is. And when we come into the dining hall and we come for a meal, this is a great opportunity to see some of those habit energies that we have. One thing that happens when we line up is that we very often, if you're like me, you start to notice some of the stories you tell yourself. One of my things is I come into the dining hall and I think, oh, I want to choose the quick line. So I'll take some time to look and see, and I guess you could call it, like they do in the airport, passenger profiling. You sort of profile, okay, that's going to be the quick line over there because of this reason and that reason and that reason. So I tend to gravitate towards the quick line. But then the interesting thing happens for me most of the time is the line that I profile as the quick line ends up being the slow line. And so of course I tell myself the story, why am I in this line? I should have chose the other line. People who were so far behind, they're already sitting down at the tables and I haven't even reached the serving table yet. And then it goes on to, why is that person taking so much? That's the only good dish on the table and there's not going to be any by the time I get there. Can't she think of the other people behind her? Like, come on, all of these things and that go through our minds. Sooner or later, if you're in my serving line, you'll end up at the place where the bowls and the plates are. When we come to the bowls and the plates, we take a split second, not too long, but you'll notice the monastics, and I invite you into this practice as well, we take a split second to either join our palms before the bowls and the plates, or just to recognize that they're there and that they're empty. Now this is of course emptiness in the philosophical sense, but on a more concrete level, they don't have food in them or on them at this moment in time. And so we take the food on the table with that awareness in our mind, that we're very, very fortunate to have the opportunity to eat once, twice, or 3 times a day. And that even in this area, not very far from this monastery at all, believe me, there are people who do not have that luxury. We don't need to think of countries or counties far away to come into contact with hunger. Just even outside of these gates. So we take the food with that awareness of what a gift it is to be able to nourish ourselves on a regular basis. And we go along the serving table, all jokes aside, we go along the serving table taking what we need for our body, which is very often different to what we want. So taking what we need and also what we're sure we'll be able to finish, with the awareness of the hunger in this area and in our world today. It's a pity to be throwing food away, so we try to minimize that, taking what we need. When we have the food that we're going to be eating, we make our way to the tables and try to sit with some other friends. For most of the meals, we will be for lunch and for dinner, we'll be enjoying the 5 contemplations. We will have some bells after a period of time, and we'll hear contemplations, or we'll sit in silence for 20 minutes eating our meal. Now during that time, it's just like sitting meditation. We remain seated just as in the meditation hall. For so many of us, we have a habit energy of, oh, if only I had just a little bit more of this little thing, it would be perfect. I don't know what it is. Maybe it's a little spray of soy sauce, maybe some salt, extra salt, maybe it's, I don't know, a little bit of nutritional yeast, these kind of things. And so we jump up, we jump down all of the meal. We don't forbid you to do that. We're not into forbidding, but we invite you into looking at our tendency to always be running after one more thing. You know, if while you're serving your meal you forgot to get a little shake of nutritional yeast, these tragedies happen and you will survive. There are other issues that might be a little more pressing, such as you neglected to get yourself some cutlery as you were serving your food. So we're somewhat flexible. And our eating meditation, just like our sitting meditation, is an invitation into discovery. So as you serve your food, mindfully take what you need, soy sauce, nutritional yeast, cutlery, and make your way to the table, and take the opportunity as you're settling down just to reflect, see you have everything you need for your eating meditation practice, and that might also include a cup of tea or some water. And then we'll wait in silence for the bells to begin. Let's also, as we're sitting in silence, connect with those around us. We can smile if we feel that to be emerging from us. We can look at each other, just acknowledge each other's presence. Acknowledge the importance of the person sitting opposite you or with you. We never know the impact that our presence has on others. So let's just acknowledge the healing presence of the other person with us. And then we'll hear some sounds of the bell and some contemplations, or we'll move into our silent period. After 15 or 20 minutes, we'll hear 2 sounds of the bell, and then we'll have some announcements on the next activities or some other things that need to be shared. During the eating meditation practice, there are so many techniques we can use. One very simple technique is to notice the food on our plate, notice what we're lifting up to our mouth, just for a split second, recognize it and call it by its true name. Broccoli. And then, silently, And then, as you place the piece of broccoli in your mouth, really contemplate where that broccoli came from. What does it contain? If we look deeply into the broccoli, we might see things such as the soil, the sunlight, the air. We see those who work so hard to garden, to help to grow this broccoli and to harvest it. We see how far the broccoli has traveled. We see so many conditions that have come together to create this entity that we call broccoli. It's a messenger from the whole cosmos. So when we have that piece of broccoli in our mouth, we can notice things such as, are we feeling invited, or are we inviting ourselves to chew it really thoroughly and to taste it? Or are we kind of gulping it down and looking for the next spoonful? You know, as meditation practitioners, very often we feel that in one thing we can see many things. Perhaps we have a mouthful of nutriment already and we're preparing the next one. Does that say anything about how we interact with nourishment in our daily life? Maybe, but that's a discovery for you to make. So eating meditation can be a profound practice. That was just a very simple exercise of eating meditation. There are so many others to explore through these next few days or when you go home. It can be deeply transformative, and I hope you enjoy the practice together with us. Usually, when we are going from here to there, we're not so aware for what we call those moments of transition. Whether they're physical moments of transition, the physical moment of I'm here and then suddenly I'm over at the door, or whether they're moments of transition in between things. And over the course of my life as a practitioner, I started to feel that it is the moments of transition that are the most powerful moment. The moment in between sitting down and standing up. The moment in between an in-breath and an out-breath. The moment in between sitting here and being at the door. Usually we're so trained, we're so well trained to be doing things or to be going somewhere, wherever that there is. It's not here. We're so trained to be over there. And it's very challenging, and it's a real edge in our practice to bring awareness to what I call these moments of transition in between doing something. I'm mindful of eating, and then suddenly, that's it. You know, where am I? Kind of things. So one powerful practice to help us to develop this capacity of bringing awareness to these moments of transition is walking meditation. Because so often in our lives, we are going somewhere. In the monastery too, we do go places. We go from our room to the meditation hall, from the meditation hall to the dining hall. Of course, there's places to go. And we do have a schedule in which our activity bell will be invited about 15 minutes before each of the places to go. But our style of walking is quite different. We don't walk in such a way that we are only going to be ourselves or only arrive when we get over there, wherever there is. Whether it's the sitting meditation tomorrow morning, which by the way, it would be a real pity if you heard the activity bell and then ran down the road and slid into the meditation hall just at the last minute kind of thing. We want to give ourselves the time and the space to be fully ourselves and to arrive at our destination with every step, with every breath. You'll notice in the monastery that we walk quite slow. We walk much slower than mostly we see in the supermarket or other places. Because we have time, we have space. This is how we choose to live our lives. We want to live our lives deeply, and we want to live them beautifully. We don't want to have only some moments that seem to be sacred moments. Walking from here to the door can be deep and can be wonderful. So during this retreat, during our time in the monastery, we have formal periods of walking meditation. We'll have, as we did this evening, from the circle garden down to the meditation hall, or we'll experience each day a period of formal walking meditation. However, whenever we take some steps in the monastery, we're invited to take our steps in such a way that we're completely ourselves, we're completely free, we have nowhere to go and nothing to do. The sitting meditation begins when we hear the sound of the bell. Perhaps we're still in our room, or we're in the dining hall when we hear the sound of the bell. The sitting meditation begins then. The Dharma talk begins then. We bring that kind of energy to each of our steps. We're already there. The energy we bring to this step is the energy we bring to that activity that we're going to. When we breathe in and out, we can breathe in and take 3 or 4 steps, walking lightly, walking gently. When we breathe out, we can take, say, 4 or 5 steps, depending on the length of our in-breath and out-breath. Just really enjoying the contact between our feet and the earth. Really being present for those we're walking with. Noticing where our mind goes when we walk. Are we really present for the beautiful sunrise or the sunset or the fragrance of the lilac or the sagebrush? All of these things are miracles of life. And they're calling out to us to say hello. So as we practice walking meditation, we can say hello to life and invite life just as it is in this moment. Speaking of inviting, so many of us, when we come to the monastery, after a day or two, we share, I've heard it many times, people saying to me, Brother Phap, it's so exhausting being in the monastery, it's so tiring, I'm so tired. And I think, how interesting is that? Because we really, to be honest, we don't do much here in the monastery, particularly during retreats. We walk, we sit, we eat, we breathe. We're not really doing much. The schedule is full. There's a lot of different activities to enjoy, but I have a hard time feeling that it's actually more than what you're doing outside. So it leads me to another question, and that is whether we haven't got a whole lot of accumulated tiredness that's going on. And I seem to feel that that is a big contributing factor. So many of us are so tired. We have so many different things. Sister Nghiem shared about multitasking. And for many of us, if we're doing only 2 things at once, that's already amazing. We're usually doing 7 or 8, simply of necessity. It's so hard. And it has its effect. It builds up. So in the monastery, I guess you've gathered right now that it's all about monotasking, giving ourselves the luxury of doing each thing fully. And what happens when we allow ourselves that space and time, a lot of that accumulated tiredness, whether it's physical tiredness or mental tiredness or emotional tiredness, comes up. Here in the monastery, it's a very healing environment. So intuitively, things circulate. We feel that we can circulate those things. And so it's important when if we start to notice that, first of all, to honor it, and then also to look at what I like to call energy leaks. And one of the energy leaks that we have is to feel that we always need to be involved in 400 different conversations or exchanges or this and that. And so one of the powerful tools for resting for us is a practice that we call noble silence. It's a practice that here in Deer Park we enjoy every evening from the end of the evening activity until after breakfast the next morning. In case there's some of us here that feel fearful when we hear silence, I'd like to share a little bit about what noble means. It's not just silence. We all know that there are the kinds of silences that are not necessarily noble. They're just, I'm not talking to you kind of silences. So noble silence is not an avoidance mechanism. For someone to be called noble in Buddhism, it has nothing to do with the color of your skin. It has nothing to do with whether you were born to a rich family or anything like that. For somebody to be called noble, then we look at three parts of their being and are they united? Body, speech, and mind. If our body, speech, and mind are together, then that person is a noble person. The first part of our awareness when we're invited into the practice of noble silence is our speech. Speech is basically breath energy combined with a few other energies, but for the most part, I think we would agree it's kind of hot air, right? We breathe out when we speak. When we're practicing noble silence, or even perhaps during the day, a helpful reflection can be, what am I communicating? Am I really communicating something in this moment? Or am I just engaged? You know, we have a number of French brothers and sisters, and the French word for what we're most likely engaged in is le bla bla. Wow, your French is very good. Am I engaged in le bla bla? Talk about this or that. You know, in fact, one of my favorite texts in the Buddhist canon is a text that talks about the 52 kinds of wrong speech. I love it. I read it very often. Things like talk about the weather, talk about ghosts, talk about politics, talk about the stories of the city or of the well. I guess it would be the water cooler these days, the water cooler conversation. Talk about this and that. Like all of these things are listed in there. And when I reflect on these things, I think, wow, so much of my conversation is not really communicating something of importance. That's okay. But when I'm invited into the practice of noble silence, I want to reflect on how I use my breath energy. So that's the first aspect. And if on reflection, what I'm about to say is really communicating something of importance and is really something that must be said in that moment, then rather than carrying around a notebook and filling up the notebook with all these sentences and writing them down and showing people these sentences, just say it. Just say, if it's really so important that you would be writing a note, just say it. Just offer it out, and then just like a breath, let it go. But most of the time, what you might discover is what you're about to share on reflection is probably one of those things that would normally fit into rapport building. Ooh, it's cold today, isn't it? Are you going to be warm enough tonight? Can I turn the light off? All of these kind of things. Our communication can be very deep, even without words. Sometimes deeper, when there's just a person there looking at us, and I'm just looking at you, and we're smiling at each other. The communication can be very deep. So the first aspect is our speech, our breath energy. Second aspect is our body. How am I interacting in space? What am I doing with my body? What am I communicating with my body? How am I taking care of my body in this moment? What's my body communicating to me? How am I feeling? Am I feeling kind of tense? Am I feeling relaxed? A wonderful practice to do during, I wanted to say what the practice was, during noble silence time, is the practice of total relaxation. When we lie down in our beds, we can do a body scan and go through all the different parts of our body, sending energy of gratitude, loving kindness, relaxation to all the organs, the tissues, all the different parts of our body in preparation for sleep. We tend to sleep very well when we do a practice of total relaxation before going to sleep. And then the last aspect of our being that we look into when we practice noble silence is our mind. What am I thinking about? What kind of narratives are going through my head? Am I still mulling over something that happened earlier today or 2 years ago? Am I thinking about or worried or anxious about what's going to be happening tomorrow? Just bringing awareness to where our mind is in this moment can also be a powerful practice during Noble Silence. So in this way, our Noble Silence practice is not a heavy practice that we do in the evenings, but it's a joyful and light practice that can be healing and revelatory for ourselves and for those around us. It's also a practice that we can continue throughout the whole day. It's not only something that takes place in the evening. So I invite you to join me in this practice of Noble Silence. I think I've covered what I need to cover. Sister, did you have any more comments you'd like to make? No? Okay. So why don't we find ourselves again in a posture that we feel completely ourselves, we feel completely relaxed. And just come back to our in-breath and our out-breath, and we'll enjoy 3 sounds of the bell.